Meeting is yours.
Very good. Thank you very much, Scott. My name is Jason Perot. I'm the chairman of the Northborough Board of Selectmen. This open meeting of the Board of Selectmen is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The governor's order, which you can find posted at the top of our agenda for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment for the tax classification hearing and for the regular public comment segment of our agenda. Meetings being convened by the Zoom application as posted on the town's website. Our agenda includes links for YouTube streaming, for the Zoom link, and also for phone access. You can also watch these proceedings live on Charter and Verizon cable access channels. Please, for the participants in the meeting, recall that the meeting is being recorded. You are in view. Be aware that anything you say or do will be captured as part of the recording. When you're not participating, you may wish to mute your microphone so we won't have any intrusive noise. Kind of the ground rules of the meeting, I will walk through the agenda, introduce each item, invite the presenter to make the presentation. After the presentation is concluded, I will go to the board members to ask for their questions, comments, or motions. If there's a public comment section, we will indicate when public comment may be offered. Please hold until your name is called. Please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps us to generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you. If members wish to engage in colloquy with other members, please do so through the chair. And for public comment, when we reach that first item, I will explain how that will be conducted. I think that takes care of the preliminaries here. I'd just like to walk through each of the participants in the meeting to check that everyone's access is satisfactory. I'm Jason Perot, Chair of the Board of Selectmen. When I call your name, please unmute yourself and give me a voice affirmative. Vice Chair Tim Kalin.
Present.
Clerk Leslie Rattan.
Present.
Julianne Hirsch.
Present.
Jason Little. I'm sorry, Scott Rogers.
Also present.
I'm going across my grid here. That takes care of the board members. We also have a number of staff members. Town Administrator John Coder.
Present.
Assistant Town Administrator Becca Meekins.
Present.
Chief of Police William Liver.
Present.
Finance Director Jason Little.
Present.
Principal Assessor Julie Brownlee. Can you try that again, Julie? We didn't hear you.
Present.
Thank you. And we also have James Dillon, one of our assessors.
Present.
And Public Works Director Scott Charpentier, who is also doubling as our Zoom host this evening. Scott?
I'm more of a Zoom trainee and I can certainly hear. Thank you.
There you go. Additionally, we have Karen Chapman from Route 9 495 Chamber of Commerce.
Good evening.
So, thank you. And additionally, we are connected with Northborough Cable Access for some of the streaming and recording capabilities. That brings us, I guess, to the first item on our agenda, approval of the November 9th, 2020 meeting minutes. Do I have a motion? Leslie.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the November 9, 2020 meeting minutes.
Second.
Moved by Leslie Rattan, seconded by Tim Kalin. This is, as all of our votes are, a roll call vote.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Scott?
there was just one amendment to what the draft that came out earlier. Just wanted to double check that that was made to correct the deed numbers.
It was, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So for roll call vote, if there's no other discussion, Scott Rogers,
Aye.
Julianne Hirsch,
Aye.
Leslie Rattan,
Aye.
Tim Kalin,
Aye.
and I also vote aye. The approval of minutes passes unanimously. It's now past the hour of 7 p.m. We have a public hearing with the Board of Assessors for the purpose of discussing the valuation of each class of property, the minimum residential factor, and the allocation of the tax burden among the four classes of real property: residential, open space, commercial, industrial, and of personal property. So for this portion of our show, I'll first turn it over to Town Administrator John Coder. We also have Principal Assessor Julie Brownlee, and I believe Assessors James Dillon and Chris Reedy available. We'll first hear the presentation, and then we'll turn to public input after that. So John Coder, Town Administrator, would you care to begin?
Yes. Let me see. All right. Mr. Chairman, can you just confirm that you can see the presentation on the screen?
I do confirm that I can see it.
All right, excellent. That means we're going through. Thank you. So as you know, every year by law, under Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 56, the Board of Selectmen is actually required to hold a tax classification hearing. So in terms of the meeting, I'll just kind of set the table for you. There's really three things that we're going to do tonight. One, we're going to just kind of give a little tax classification primer for some folks that are new or maybe haven't been through this process before. Talk about what tax classification is, what's happening with the town's values, and what this whole process means. Then we'll turn it over to the Board of Assessors, essentially Julie Brownlee, our Principal Assessor. She's going to go through the meat of the presentation for voting purposes, and that's the tax rate, the options, and the implications. And then last but not least, it'll be up to the Board of Selectmen to actually take up their vote regarding the tax classification, the residential exemption, and the small commercial exemption. What I typically tell you is, one of the things we like to try to do at this meeting, rather than just jump right into the tax classification piece of it, is to use it as an opportunity to update the board and the public on what's happening with the town's economic development, what's happening with our total valuations, because obviously 80% of our budget, upon which we provide all these services that everybody knows and loves in the town, it's based on taxes and our tax base. So it's very important for us to know the state of our tax base and how things are trending and where it looks like that we're going. So first, just in terms of what tax classification is, and equally important what it isn't, it allows the community to have different tax rates for different classes of property. So you have residential, open space, commercial, industrial, and personal property. And so just so people understand, years ago, prior to about 1980, when Prop 2.5 came into play, municipalities sometimes used to manipulate data to kind of shift the tax burden from residential to commercial sometimes. That was sort of an informal process. But with Prop 2.5, the Department of Revenue certifies all of our values now. And so classification is the formal process, and it's a policy decision by which the Board of Selectmen, if they so choose, they can shift some of the tax burden from the residential properties to the commercial properties. And again, this is a policy decision. And as you hear me say every year, a couple key things to keep into consideration here is that shift does not raise any additional tax dollars. Essentially, it takes the tax burden from one class and places it on another. So this is exclusively a policy decision to artificially shift the tax burden from one class to another. It's an arbitrary decision that's left to the Board of Selectmen. I do always want to give people perspective. Since Prop 2.5 and tax classification process has come into play, no Board of Selectmen has ever voted to institute or to artificially shift the tax burden between any class. And fundamentally, what has been expressed over the years is that it's an issue of fairness and sustainability. Fairness in that everybody pays their fair share. Sustainability in terms of our long-term economic development program is premised on getting businesses to come into town to locate here and to treat them fairly without a bait and switch, come locate here, but then we would shift the tax burden and increase their tax burden artificially. So let's spend a little bit of time and talk about what's happening in Northborough in terms of our values. And so fiscal 21, we had certified new growth now of 65.4 million. And that's between July 1 of 2019 and June 30th of 2020. So that's essentially new construction, new personal property that has come into play. Now, if you remember when we were going back and setting the table for the fiscal 21 budget, we had pushed our estimation of new growth up considerably from 30 million, I believe, up to $45 million. Ultimately, we don't always know exactly how much with large projects, how far along they're going to be and how much new growth we're going to realize. So we want to be conservative with those numbers. But 65.4 is a considerable number. That's actually a very, and we'll show you a chart in a moment. It's a good amount of new growth. And as we'll talk about in a moment, it's really sort of one of our last big pushes of economic development that's occurring in the town at this moment. In terms of the different values, so residential versus commercial industrial, the residential property values are particularly, single-family homes are relatively flat. Single-family homes, overall residential values are up a little over 0.5%. Single-family homes are actually down 0.07%. So within residential, you've got single-family homes, condominiums, multifamily homes. So together, those values are basically flat. Commercial values also 0.26, relatively stable and flat. Where we've seen all the action in this past year is in those industrial values. And so it's not really, don't think of it as like the industrial property values are up 26%. It's the value of all the industrial property. So it's market valuation changes, but in this instance, it's primarily new development. So that industrial number, 23.3%, is comprised of 4 new developments, mostly down on Bartlett Street, 301, 330, 350 Bartlett, and 150 Hayes Memorial. So these are in various stages of completion. We've realized about 2/3 of the value of those developments right now, and we anticipate in fiscal 2022 we'll pick up that last third as those projects are completed. And that's something to keep in mind because those are the last of the significant economic industrial development in town because, frankly, we're out of land. The town of Northborough is approaching build out at this point. Something to keep in mind in terms of the residential. Well, we'll talk about this on the next slide, but just in terms of the amount of residential and of development we're seeing, it's very, very limited. Now, the big picture positive news to bring home is that on total, the value of the town is up from 3.07 to $3.17 billion with a B. So one of the things we always want to keep an eye on is what is our overall tax base or overall valuation doing? And we have been lucky to see that our valuations overall had continued to appreciate and grow. And that's great because it means our tax base has continued to appreciate both by market fluctuation, but also with new growth and new development. In terms of class, I'll just take you back. If you remember in the early 2000s, the Northborough was about 80-20 split, 80% residential and 20% commercial industrial. Moving forward, as you can see from the last 5 years, we've settled in around 75-25, 75% residential, 25% commercial industrial. Now that will bounce around a percentage or two depending on what's happening with values, but you can see here it's 73-27 right now. We're really going to settle in around around this amount. As I said, in terms of the tax base, we're pretty much approaching build out. There's one large industrial parcel off on the southwest cutoff. But as far as residential development and available residential land, it's minimal. So through good economic development, we have been able to shift essentially the tax burden overall from an 80-20 to 73-27% right now. Now that might, again, fluctuate another percent or two. The only thing that would really move this now in any meaningful way would be, Kimball Sand and Gravel, 50-acre development happens, or we were to somehow approve a large residential apartment building or condominium complex, something like that. As far as single family homes, we're just not seeing that type of development because the land isn't there. And so breaking down the $65.4 million of new growth in fiscal 21, we have residential at about $6.2 million. So we've only had 7 new single family homes built. And that's been the trend. A typical year is 7 to a dozen. And they tend to be existing lots where people own multiple acres and they subdivide and build a house on the property that they own. But we don't really have large tracts of land available for significant residential development. So we're pretty much built out there. On the commercial side of things, very little commercial growth. Most of what we're seeing there are just improvements, tenant fit outs, small minor additions, things of that nature, but not much in the way of commercial growth. The big nut here clearly is the industrial, and specifically $46.2 million. That is essentially the new developments that we've seen out on Bartlett Street, the new transportation warehouses that have been constructed or under construction right now. So that's where the action has been in terms of real new growth. Now, 53 million in new growth, and we have 12.4 million in personal property. Now, the interesting thing you hear me say every year, new growth, the whole formula for new growth, it's somewhat of an arbitrary determination, and it really has its basis in Prop 2.5. So we're able to basically take the new growth, new development that occurs in town, real property, buildings, and actual construction. But then we're also allowed, as part of the formula for new growth, which increases our levy capacity, we're able to take into account personal property. So personal property is really equipment and things of that nature, not land, not buildings. It's mostly equipment. And there's a very important distinction to make between growth and real property and growth and personal property. And the simplest way to make this point is to think about your personal life. Your house and the land it's on is your real property. A car is equipment, personal property, right? So over 10 years, you buy a house, generally you'll see appreciation and value in your real property, right? It doesn't go away. But what happens to your car? Your car depreciates in value. So personal property, although for the formula of new growth and to calculate our available levy capacity for purposes of Prop 2.5, personal property is an important piece of that. In terms of really thinking about our tax base and sustainability and what's going to be there, it's the real estate growth. That's what we want to focus on. And just to put it in perspective, over the 12.4 million in personal property, about 9 million of that is really in a formula or a methodology change at the state level for how they assess the utilities in Northborough. So we have 4 utilities. We have Boston Gas, Eversource, also known as NSTAR, National Grid, and New England Power. So the state changed the valuation method for those utilities, and about 9 million of that personal property growth is that change in methodology. I just pointed out so that people understand that not all new growth is equal. And the things that we really want to focus on is the long-term economic development and physical new growth, because that's what will be there next year. And hopefully it'll actually appreciate in value as opposed to the personal property, which tends to will depreciate over time. But in total, you can see fiscal 21, we have $65.4 million in new growth. Now let's put that into perspective for you. You know, I love trends and graphs to kind of convey information. But this is a history of new growth in Northborough going back to 2007. And hopefully the colors come through on the broadcast well, but you see here this sort of mustard color, that's the residential. And our biggest residential push going back 2011 to 2012 was Avalon Bay, 382 units of new residential development up there, followed by Northborough Crossing. This is the mall in 2012, 2013. This was all-time record, $92.4 million in new growth in fiscal 2013. And we always make a point of reminding folks that when we saw all that new growth and it created additional tax revenues for us, the town and the Board of Selectmen and the policy boards and committees constrained spending. We did not just ramp up budgets. And so we created levy capacity. So Northborough is in the envious position of not being at the max of Prop 2.5. So we have levy capacity because of that. But then as you look down here and you come through the more recent years from 2014 through, you see new growth kind of down at this new norm, you know, somewhere between 30 and $40 million. That's kind of where we are with personal property, some renovations, additions, people making improvements to their homes, tenant fit outs. But absent significant development, that's kind of where we are. Now, if you look at 2001 here, this little tiny sliver down at the bottom, that's residential. And if you look at it here, what you see is this residential trend is tapering off. Actually, that's the commercial. This is the residential down here, this mustard colored, as I said. This beigeier color is the commercial. But what you're seeing is it's tapering down from back here. You know, this is when you saw subdivisions going in and condominiums being built. We just don't have the land for that. So the residential is going to be, in terms of new growth and new development, is going to be minimal. Commercial, if you look in 2021, the commercial piece of it is, sorry, I'm having a little trouble with my cursor here. Right here, this little tiny sliver that's barely visible, that's the commercial growth in 2021. It's minimal. And then something that you see popping up here in 2021, this new gray coloring, this is our industrial, which has been fairly silent over, you know, you look at the trend 2016 to 2019 or so, we haven't seen a lot of it. So this is that last bit of land out on Bartlett Street, that industrial area that's been developed. And the thing to keep in mind about this is, so we're seeing rather significant new growth in fiscal 21 compared to the prior 6 years or so. But next year, it's going to drop down considerably. And after that, we're going to be back to new growth that you see in 2015, 2016, somewhere around that $30 million range. And again, the town has reached build out. This is not unanticipated. We talked about this every year. We spoke about it in great depth at your financial trend monitoring meeting last December in 2019. So the town is approaching build out. And what we have for new growth now is going to be focused more moving forward after 2022 on redevelopment, small additions, things of that nature. We're not going to see large, well, we have the capacity for potentially one large area of economic development, and that's on the southwest cutoff. That's a 50-acre parcel, Kimball Sand and Gravel. That's sort of our last remaining industrial parcel. We have 0 Bartlett, but it doesn't look like anything's happening with that, at least in the immediate future. So this is kind of where we are. The zoning map, we've talked about this. So this pink down here and the pink in this corner here, these are the last of the commercial properties and the industrial properties right around in the center here. This is actually Sudbury Valley Trustees. This is the hospital, the state hospital land. And up here, above the northern part of this is actually Algonquin Regional High School. So this middle area is the last of the industrial development down on Bartlett, and that's pretty much wrapping up. Down here, you have the mall, and then you have Kimball Sand and Gravel as one of the last big pieces of economic development. After that, we're going to be looking at, like I said, the redevelopment, small projects, and we're going to be seeing our new growth kind of tapering down. Now, why is that so important? Why do you hear me talk about that at length at our financial trend monitoring and here tonight? It's important because we are, it's that new growth that gives you that levy capacity, that ability to increase taxes without having to go for a Proposition 2.5 override. And so when that new growth tapers off, our budgets will then press up against that Prop 2.5 levy capacity, which is what happens in mature, built-out communities. And when you get to that point and you reach the limits of Prop 2.5, then your budgets are constrained, and the only way to get additional tax dollars would be to seek an override. So having that capacity is very important. It's a luxury for a town like Northborough because we have the ability to tap into that levy capacity, and then hopefully we'll get it back with a little bit of new growth at the end of the fiscal year balance. So let's talk about our tax base in terms of our industries and our top taxpayers. You've heard me say this many times. Most towns will look at their top 10 taxpayers. Several years ago, we moved to top 15 because we saw economic development and growth, and we started to see our top 10 taxpayers falling off, and we wanted people to see that we weren't losing these businesses. They were just being replaced by other economic development higher up on the list, and that was pushing them down. And so again, this year is no different than prior years. So 15, 16, 17, and 18, 16, which fell off of our list, is Lower Shops Way. This is the second phase of the mall. And that's about $11 million of value. They dropped off this list, but they didn't go anywhere. They're still there. So it's a success story for us. UMass Memorial and the ball fields across from the entrance to the mall. That was on this list. That now is number 17. And A. Dewey Pyle, which at one point was number 15, is now number 18. So the thing I like to stress when you look at this is some communities have all their eggs in one basket, and we don't. As you look at this list, we have retail, we have R&D facilities like St. Gobain's international headquarters is in Northborough. We have biotech like Genzyme up on Forbes Road. We have transportation. We have healthcare like UMass and several of the new facilities that have been built up and around the mall area. And of these businesses that you see on this list, roughly 10 of them have either located or expanded in Northborough in the last 10 years or so. So this has been our economic development success story. How do we get from that 80-20 to 75-25 or 27% commercial industrial? This has been our success story. And the beauty of this is that these industries are stable. they're diversified. And when I look at Northborough, and I mentioned many times now that we have approached and are approaching build out, this is a stable tax base on the commercial industrial side. You've got diversity, you've got growth in, as I said, 10 out of 15 of these are new or expanded in the last 10 years or so. So the long-term economic stability of our tax base, especially on the commercial industrial side, looks very good and very strong. On the residential side, I mean, that's our bread and butter. People move here because we have excellent services, excellent schools, and a great location. So our values overall are very stable, and that's positive for the town of Northborough because, again, 80% of our budget is based on our tax base. And so this is all very good news for the town's tax base and our stability. So let's talk about what everybody wants to know, which is what does this mean for taxes? So we've got a few things that have happened this year. So initially, we passed the budget in July. We didn't actually provide an estimated tax impact in July because there were too many unknowns. The largest factor for us is we had no indication whatsoever of where state aid was going to come in. Now, we had budgeted a 17% cut in state aid, and we sat tight to see what the state was going to do. So there's some good news and some bad news in here. The bad news is that the state couldn't get the assistance it was looking for from the federal government, and the state couldn't get their budget done. And for fiscal 21, it's still not done. Now, the Senate has provided their budget, but the fiscal 21 budget at the state level still is not complete. And we're well into the start of fiscal 21. But what the state had to do, because they couldn't get their budget completed, and all of the municipalities like us need to set our tax rate by November. And if we can't, then we're all going to be in a world of trouble. The state said, you know what? We're going to hold you, everybody, harmless, level fund your state aid. And what they did is they used about half of their shortfall from federal CARES Act money, and the other half came out of their $3.5 billion stabilization fund. So the state put a lot of one-time revenues to hold us harmless in fiscal 21. And what you heard the governor say when they did this was, that's 21, all bets are off for fiscal 22. So we're anticipating the real difficult fiscal year, and the cuts are going to be in fiscal 2022. And so given the fact that they haven't completed the 21 budget, here we are in November. We have no idea, couldn't even fathom a guess at what state aid's going to do in fiscal 22, but yet we need to put a budget together in the next couple of months. And that's what we're working on. But let's come back to fiscal 21 in this slide here. So what's happening? We had a couple things that are working in our favor. If you remember when we looked at fiscal 21 initially, local receipts were down. We were budgeting a cut in state aid, and we weren't going to dip into our levy capacity. So we were looking at just a typical Proposition 2.5 increase, which would result in about a $239 tax increase. We were hopeful we were going to get some assistance from the state, and that number would come down significantly. We did not think or anticipate the state wouldn't be able to get their budget process done, and therefore we would have as much assistance from the state in this budget. But let me walk through a couple of these numbers. So market adjustments, new growth came in stronger. Those projects out on Bartlett moved along nicely, and so we were able to capture that new growth. So the market adjustments and that new growth resulted in significant assistance in reducing the tax impact for fiscal 21. In terms of the tax levy changes, we received $932,000 in state aid, basically because they held us harmless, something nobody anticipated they would be able to do. So that reduced the tax impact. And then one of the things we did to make an adjustment in the fiscal 21 budget is we actually added some money back into the overlay account. Now, the overlay account's a fund that's used to offset abatements and exemptions. So we're anticipating going into fiscal 2022 that we may see an increase in abatements, particularly from commercial and industrial properties. When we set our budget back in July, I think everybody was sort of hoping that the pandemic would be short-lived, or at least the hard impacts would start to move behind us. We know now that it's going to be with us potentially through this time next year. And so we wanted to increase that levy, that overlay account back, and you do that at the point at which you set the tax rate. So we increased that overlay account back up to what we would normally have in a typical year, which is 1.2% of the levy, which is about $650,000. We are anticipating, again, keep in mind, we talk about abatements and so forth. It's based on calendar year values. So moving forward, the next round of abatements as we move into 2022 is going to be based on fiscal 2020 abatements and what's happening in terms of potential business closures and things of that nature. So all said and done, the bottom line good news is, on average, now this is on average, if you own a multifamily home or a condominium, which are moving, increasing in value, you might see something different happen to your tax bill specifically, but single family homes overall, the average single family home tax bill is going to decrease by approximately $65 in fiscal 2021. So one of the goals, stated goals of the board and the financial boards and committees is always to maintain Northborough as an affordable place to live and to provide and to mitigate tax impacts. So we could have held a fall town meeting and spent that money. We could have increased all the budgets and restored all of the stuff that we cut and constrained for fiscal 21. But we did not do that. So we allowed the state aid to come. And by the way, just so everybody's clear, it's still not settled. If something significant happens, there's always the option that the governor could exercise his 9C mid-year cuts to state aid. So that's still an option. As you know, I sit on the Mass Municipal Association's Fiscal Policy Committee. And so we have had extensive discussions about, what could happen as fiscal 21 plays out at the state level. So we do have assurances that this is good for now, but the state really doesn't know what they're going to be able to do for sure until the feds tell them what, if anything, they're going to get in additional aid. And it doesn't look like that's going to happen by the end of the calendar year. So there's talk that we may see, the discussion may pick up again about federal aid to municipalities and state governments, again, potentially in January, but right now we're not anticipating getting any news. As you know, the Federal CARES Act funding is set to expire on December 30th. And so unless we get another round of aid from the federal government, we're feeling a lot of additional expenses, particularly the school department, around cleaning and protocols and testing. That's going to be problematic for the second half of fiscal 21. So we're very hopeful that the federal government is going to release another round of aid. But in terms of Northborough, in terms of right now and setting the tax rate, legally setting the tax rate with real information, at this point in time, I'm very pleased, and I know the board is pleased, that we'll be able to have a very reasonable negative tax impact for the average single family home. I always like to put these types of discussions into some context here. And so this is a history of the average single family home tax bill increases. And if you look back to fiscal 12 to 13, 14, where we had very modest increases, those were, again, the years where the mall development came into play. And as I said, we brought those new revenues in from the mall, and we did not raise the residential tax bills to the limits of Prop 2.5. So that's why those years are small. From 15 going on up, these are more typical increases. And just to remind you, in fiscal 16 and 17, we saw a little bit of bump. This is where the Lincoln Street $25 million project. We bonded just shy of $14 million. That's where that came in. And 18, we was a typical year, about a $242 increase. That's about, just to kind of link this together, we need about a 3.5% increase, the general government and the school department, to maintain our current level of services. And about a 3% increase in our budget, assuming we get a little bit more in state aid, is about a $240 increase. So then you look at fiscal 19 and fiscal 20, those were years where in fiscal 19, we saw a 9% increase in our in our Algonquin Regional High School assessment, right? Because we had shifting enrollments. Their budget was going up 3.5%, but we saw 9%. That was like a $600,000 increase just because of shifting enrollments. And then in fiscal 20, we saw an 8.3% increase in our Algonquin Regional High School assessment. So why, that's why those numbers are a little bit higher. And then you come to fiscal 21, and because we constrained the budget so much, because we saw a little bit more in new growth, and because we saw level funded state aid when we budget a cut in state aid for 21, we're looking at a reduction in the average single family home tax bill. Now there's an added side benefit to this, other than the fact that we're helping all of the residents with tax relief, and that is our unused levy capacity. Because we're not increasing our taxes to the max of Prop 2.5, our tax levy capacity increases. So every year in the fall and December, I talk about at a trend monitoring our levy capacity. And over the next 5 years, as we look at trying to maintain a typical 3.5% budget increase for the general government and the schools to maintain level services, would require us to dip into that levy capacity a little bit each year. And so over a 5-year period, we anticipate that we would be at the limits of 2.5 and the levy capacity would be gone. The good news is, because of this very conservative budget and the cuts that we made, and the fact that we didn't have a fall town meeting and restore those cuts and expand spending during this very difficult economic time, it means our levy capacity will grow to almost $3.4 million. That's going to be helpful to us as we manage ourselves over the next 5+ years, and not be at the wall and the limits of Prop 2.5. That is a luxury and a great place to be. So bringing this kind of all together in one slide, you can see the valuations, what they've done over the course of the last several years. Because of the values going up and the spending not increasing as much, the tax rate will actually go down from 17.25 to 17.12. The average single family home value, as I said, is down about 0.07%. So if you look at it, it went from 461 744 to 461 432. So it's about a $312 decrease in the average single family home value for this cycle. Average tax bill, $7,900. So that sort of brings everything together and kind of where we are for our fiscal 21. Again, just to bring home the key points, our total valuation is up 3.17 billion. That's good. Our tax base remains diversified, strong. Our values are increasing, and our new growth is increasing. That, again, is an enviable and great place for us to be. And it's largely due in this cycle to good economic development for the town. New growth, 65.4 million. Tax base strong, diversified, stable. And then last but certainly not least, especially in this economic environment, we're seeing the tax impact on the average single family home actually going down in fiscal 21. That's about as successful of a story as we possibly could lay out for the residents of Northborough in this pandemic. Just to cut anything further out of the operating budget would mean we could not maintain services. We would be removing police, fire, teachers, DPW. We'd be cutting bodies. And so I think we've struck in my opinion, a very good balance of constraining spending, being very conservative budgetarily, seeing and encouraging good economic growth, being conservative with our state aid, resulting in a reduced tax impact for the average single-family home at a time when they need it most. So with that, I certainly could answer any questions that the board may have. But before I turn it over to the second part of the agenda, which is where our principal assessor, Julie Brown-Lee, will go through the main purpose of tonight's hearing, and that is to talk about the split rate scenarios and the exemptions that the board will be voting on at the end of this presentation. So through the chair, if anybody has any questions before we move to the next section.
Yes, members of the board, do you have any questions? I don't have everyone in view with the shared presentation here, so please speak up. And I hear no questions at this time. John, thank you very much for a very detailed presentation. As always, I think board members who have seen it a few times are familiar with the content. As someone looking at it for the first time, it's a lot to digest, but I think the main points here pretty much summarize what the impact is for this year. So I certainly want to just pass along my thanks to town staff for some of their guidance and their oversight of the budget through this past budget approval cycle. And put us in a good position to be able to deal with adverse impacts if they had materialized, and to take advantage of more favorable conditions that seem to have played out here. So appreciate it. Yes, John.
Oh, I was just going to say, so if there are no further questions, I'll hand the presentation over to Julie Brown-Lee, our new principal assessor. As you know, Dan Brogy moved on. He moved to the Cape and found a house, found a job closer to his house down on the Cape. And so Julie Brown-Lee was promoted to principal assessor. And so she's going to be going through the next set of slides with you this evening. So with that, I'll hand it over to Julie.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Good, good. With me tonight is Jim Dillon, one of our members of the Board of Assessors, and also participating online is Christopher Reedy. Jim was formerly an assessor in Leominster and is currently on the board in Holden as well as Northborough. And Chris Reedy is principal assessor of Shrewsbury. So they're both great. I'm going to describe 3 items that the Board of Selectmen will be voting on tonight. The first is classification, and it's to determine if we'll keep a single tax rate or shift the tax burden partially from the residential class to the commercial classes. After that will be the residential exemption, and finally the small commercial exemption. I'll go through each of them and answer any questions when I'm done. I should point out that none of these 3 options change the amount of money raised for the town. The split tax rate scenarios is the main reason that we're here with this meeting tonight, and for most communities, whether or not you should adopt this classification. Split tax classification would allow the town to split the tax rate from having 1 rate for everyone into 2 rates, a lower rate for residential properties and a higher rate for the commercial industrial base. At the top of this slide, you can see how 1 rate works, which we have always had. There's an average value for each for the single family homes, condominiums, commercial and industrial classes. And at the right are the average tax bill amounts for each of those classes. Those bills are calculated using the single tax rate of $17.12 as we are proposing here tonight. In the green at the bottom, it shows what happens if you choose a small shift. If we split the tax rate by just 5%, the residential rate goes down a bit from $17.12 to $16.80. To balance that loss in revenue, though, the commercial industrial rate has to go up. You can see on the left side the same average assessed values for the different classes. On the right-hand side, you can see that tax bills for single-family houses go down a little bit, 148 for single-family homes, $102 for condominiums, whereas the commercial and industrial tax bills go up significantly. Let me restate, this does not change the total amount of revenue raised. It only shifts taxes from everyone paying at the same rate to the commercial industrial base paying a disproportionate share of the tax burden. This dual rate applies to small commercial property owners too, not just the bigger owners. Therefore, Northborough has never adopted it, and the Board of Assessors does not recommend it now. Next, we'll move on to the residential exemption. It was designed to help cities and towns that have low rates of owner occupancy. It helps municipalities that have significant numbers of absentee landlords like Cambridge and Boston. It helps towns that have a lot of vacation homes like the Cape and Islands. Therefore, this exemption isn't relevant to a town like Northborough, where almost everyone lives where they own. The way it works is it allows us to lower the taxable value of residential properties. But when you lower those values, you have to make up lost revenue by raising the residential tax rate. So this slide shows the net result for a 10% exemption. Smaller homes pay less taxes. You can see the rate has changed from 1712 for a 10% exemption to a rate of 1881. So a smaller house around a $350,000 value would pay about $230 difference. The average single-family home might pay slightly less, but most in that range would about break even. And higher valued homes, 650, would pay higher taxes. In other words, the larger homes subsidize the smaller homes. Anyone whose house, you can see at the bottom, is assessed at $485,810 or higher would pay more with the exemption than without it. Again, this exemption doesn't raise any revenue and it does not affect commercial properties. It only shifts the burden within residential classes. Finally, we have the small commercial exemption. Commercial building owners with property valued at less than $1 million and who have 10 employees or less would receive a break in their taxes. Again, to make up for lost revenue, we would have to raise the taxes of commercial real estate owners whose properties are worth $1 million or more. It's important to note that higher taxes would affect not only the really big commercial properties, but it would increase taxes for many moderate businesses along Main Street, for example. This exemption doesn't affect residential taxes at all, and it does not create any new revenue. So as a board, we agree and recommend that Northborough maintain a single tax rate, as it always has, fair and equitable to all. And we recommend that the town should not adopt either the residential exemption or the small commercial exemption. Thanks to everyone for your time. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Julie. Appreciate the presentation. Members of the board first, do you have any questions? Julianne?
Yeah, Julie, could you give an example of the residential tax exemption?
Sure. So if we go back to that slide, if we could go back to that slide, number 18. Thank you. So you are shifting the tax rate. You're making the tax rate higher for all residences. but you subtract out an amount that's calculated, we've calculated at 10%. So for everybody's value, you would subtract out that exemption amount in the middle, $43,648. So your $350,000 house would now have a taxable value of $306,352. When you multiply that times the higher tax rate of $1,881, they have a net savings on their tax bill of $230. Again, for the average family house, you subtract 43,000 and multiply it by the higher tax rate. And right around the middle, you might save $41. You might, but just above that, you would pay more. And for people with houses, for example, in the range around 650,000, if you subtract 43,000 from their value and multiply by the tax rate of 1881, they would end up paying almost $300 more.
Yeah.
So the tax rate is higher for everyone, but it impacts the more expensive homes.
If I may, just through the chair, there's only about 12 or 13 communities in the Commonwealth that do this. Most of them are out on the Cape where people own very expensive homes, but they're not there. And as Julie said, Boston, Cambridge, this is not applicable to a municipality our size, but it is one of the options. So we're required by law to go through it, but it's not something you would see in a town like Northborough.
Any other questions from the board? Leslie?
Are you taking comments or are you just looking for questions right now?
No, feel free to provide any comments.
Oh, okay, super. I also would like to thank John. You always give a great presentation. As you noted, we hear this every year, but I think it's great to go over all the detail and also for the audience to understand what we're actually voting on and why we're voting this way. And I also want to thank Julie Brownlee. Great information. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. So I will sound like a broken record by simply saying again that
Leslie?
the single.
Leslie?
Yes.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt. We are still proceeding through the hearing. And so before making any deliberative comments that you want, I just want to check to see whether that's something that you were preparing to do.
Yes.
We'll want to wait to the end of the hearing and the hearing's closed before offering any.
Sure.
Okay, thanks. We also have here Karen Chapman, who's president and CEO of the Route 9495 Corridor Chamber of Commerce. Each year, Karen appears to provide the chamber's viewpoint. Karen, would you care to present your viewpoint on tax classification?
Thank you, Jason, and to the Board of Selectmen. Each year when we review about maintaining a single tax classification or looking at other options, the Chamber does submit its letter of support representing the businesses in the town of Northborough and in the greater region that we do support maintaining a single tax classification. And I'd like to point out right now, shifting any burden on business right now would be just a very hard time on business right now. As we know, we've been going through this pandemic. So I think it's a great way to attract business by having a fair and equitable tax rate. So the chamber will always stand in support of a single tax classification.
Great, thank you very much, Karen.
Thank you.
If there are no other questions from the board, we can proceed to the public input portion of the hearing. And to just review the circumstances for that, for the people who are dialed in on Zoom, you should have a raise hand feature. If you would like to speak as part of this hearing, you can raise your hand and we can recognize you. When recognized, I'll first ask you to state your name and address, and then to provide your comments. I think as is typical, we will ask you to hold to approximately a 3-minute maximum time. So please be efficient in your presentation. Um, Anyone on the Zoom call? I don't see anyone with a phone dial-in. The only people I see are attendees through Zoom. So do I have any raised hands? Going once, going twice, and closed. Okay. No public comment or no public input for the purpose of the tax classification hearing. Do I have a motion to close the hearing?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I move the board vote to close the public hearing with the Board of Assessors for the purpose of discussing the valuation of each class of property, the minimum residential factor, and the allocation of the tax burden among the four classes of real property: residential, open space, commercial, industrial, and of personal property.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved by Scott Rogers, seconded by Tim Kalin to close the tax classification hearing. This is a roll call vote. Scott Rogers,
Aye.
Julianne Hirsch,
Aye.
Leslie Rattan,
Aye.
Tim Kalin,
Aye.
and I also vote aye. The hearing is closed. I invite members of the board, any deliberative comments you wish to make based on the information you received. Leslie?
Yes. Sorry, I think I jumped the gun a little bit too early there. But I wanted to, I wanted to say that I do agree with the recommendation from the Board of Assessors, and also with Karen Chapman and the letter that she submitted to us. I think that the single tax rate has been very beneficial to the town of Northborough. I see no reason to change that. And as Karen said, that it's certainly not beneficial to businesses at this point in time. That's something I would hate to do. And we say every year that we don't want to do any kind of a bait and switch type of thing. I think businesses that come into town need to know that when they've decided to move here, that we're not going to switch it up on them. So I think it remains an attraction to businesses to come here. And so I would recommend that we maintain the single tax rate.
Thank you, Leslie. Any other comments? Tim?
Yeah, I just think it's important to point out too, for the small commercial exemption, that the property tax savings that people may see with that actually go to the property owner and not necessarily to the business owners that are housed in those buildings. So I know everybody wants to do everything they can to help out all the small businesses we have in town. But I don't think this is a way to do it. It goes to the property owners. You know, and the same thing can be said for a split tax rate, that the businesses themselves may not directly benefit, that the property owners will have the opportunity to just pocket that money and not pass it on to the business owners. So with that being said, I agree with Leslie that it's important to keep a single tax rate. We all live in this town. We all use the services in this town. So I think everybody contributes equally. I think that's a fair and equitable way to handle the tax rates in Northborough. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Any other comments? I'll just add the observation that as we saw earlier tonight, the proportions of residential versus commercial and industrial properties is 75% compared to 25%. And any shift to the commercial industrial class would be limited by law, the maximum amount you can shift, and the amount you could shift up to that limit would not really provide a very meaningful reduction on the residential side based on the relative proportions of the residential versus the non-residential classes. So there isn't a tremendous amount of benefit to be gained by taking that action anyway. With that said, any other final comments, questions? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move the board vote to maintain a uniform tax rate for all classes of property at a factor of 1, to oppose the implementation of a residential exemption, and to oppose the implementation of a small commercial exemption.
Second.
Moved by Tim Kalen, seconded by Leslie Rattan. Final chance, any further discussion? Hearing none, this is a roll call vote. Scott Rogers,
Aye.
Julianne Hirsch,
Aye.
Leslie Rattan,
Aye.
Tim Kalen,
Aye.
and I also vote aye. Motion carries unanimously for the single tax rate. I want to thank our guest, Karen Chapman from Chamber of Commerce. Appreciate your being here tonight. I want to thank Julie Brownlee, Jim Dillon, and Chris Reedy, Board of Assessors, for being here and for the presentation material. And also Town Administrator John Coder and his staff for the preparation, giving us the backdrop of what all this really means. So thank you all for your assistance and participation.
All right.
Yep. I think we're going to move you out of here. Yes. And it's now past the hour of 7:30 p.m. We have Rob Tev from the Northborough Fire Department. Captain Tev will be presenting on the fire department's annual Toys for Tots program.
Would you like me to bring him in, Mr. Chair?
Oh, there he is. Yes, I just popped him in
Oh,
here.
okay.
Sorry, I thought he was on the panelist list. Didn't realize he was in the attendee list.
How's that?
And let me there we go. Hello, Captain Tev.
Yes, can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, perfect. I will.
Please proceed. Yep.
I'll make my comments quick here so you can get on with your meeting. So yes, so we will be hosting our annual toy drive that we've done in the past at the fire department. Obviously, this year has presented us with some challenges in terms of drop-off locations and trying to, minimize contact public to public and public to us as well. So this year it will be a little different, and we will only be collecting toys on 2 Saturdays in November 28th and December 5th from 9 to 6. We will have bins outside the front entrance of the fire station so people can just drop them off and go on their merry way and be outside and not be opening doors coming into the station and things like that. And then that will also give us time to sort of set the toys aside, let them essentially quarantine before we get them down to Worcester, where they will do the same before they start shipping them out to the various families in the Worcester County area. So we've had a very good track record over many, many years doing this program, and we certainly didn't want to give it up for the year, and we felt that this would probably be the best way that we could still accomplish some goodwill and get some toys down to Worcester, so we can still do our part to help that cause. And on the press release that has been forwarded, it's on the town's website, social media sites, and some print media will be placing it out there. There is a link to make online donations and essentially do a virtual toy buy where you can submit a donation to the Worcester Toys for Tots, and the Marines will then go out to various establishments and purchase the toys that they need. So if you do not want to go out to subject yourself in other venues for purchasing toys at local establishments, you can do it virtually from your home as well this year. So that's a good benefit for folks to take advantage of if they're not comfortable getting out into the stores. So we've, last year in 2019, Worcester County Toys for Tots collected somewhere around 41,000 toys. helped out about 14,000 children countywide, and we donated about 1,000 toys last year, and we've been pretty consistent with that. So we hope we can meet that goal, but we understand that some of that might be offset through virtual donations and things like that. So we are collecting. It will be on those 2 days. And certainly people can contact me directly at the fire station through my email, which is rtev, THEVE, @town.northborough.ma.us. And I will respond to you even when I'm off duty. I get all my mail to my phone. And if there are folks out there who need support and would like to register so that they can receive support, I can arrange that and get you in contact with those folks to get registered so that you can get the support that you need. And people can reach out to me at any time, and if you have questions or concerns or anything like that about the program, be happy to answer them. That's my spiel for this year, and hopefully next year we'll be back to our traditional collection where we have different drop-off sites at the library, police department here, and town hall, and we'll have this pandemic behind us, and we'll be back to our traditional program next year. Anybody have any questions or anything they'd like to add?
Thank you, Rob. Any questions, members of the board? Leslie?
Yes, thank you very much, Rob. I think it's great that you're doing this. It's fantastic every year that you collect this much. Quick question. You have the 2 drop-off days, but what if it's really horrible weather and you don't really want to have the bin sitting outside because everything gets wet?
We
Are
do.
you going to have an alternate day for drop-off, or?
We have a couple of the easy up tents, so we'll deploy those tents if we have to, and keep the bins under there to keep the toys out of the weather.
Okay.
This Saturday, upcoming Saturday, the forecast looks pretty good. So, I think we can definitely get through this weekend, and, hope that Mother Nature cooperates, but it's been a tough year for everything. So we'll see what Mother Nature throws at us for the following weekend, but we'll roll with the punches, and we'll have a method that everything will remain protected.
Okay, that sounds great. Also, do you have any other recommendations as far as age groups? Do you find over the years that there's a certain age group that kind of you see less of?
It changes year to year. I usually try to get down to the warehouse, somewhat early on to see if they have an overwhelming need in some sort of age group. I haven't been down there yet this year, but if I do hear of something, I'll put an addendum to the press release for where the need most is. I mean, many times, the very, very young newborns, and then the older kids, 15, 16, it gets a little harder, a little more expensive, for things, especially for the older kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. I appreciate it, Rob. Thank you very much for doing this.
Oh, yeah, happy to. We're happy to do it.
Any other questions, board members? Hearing none. Rob, I just had a quick question. You had mentioned the online option for people to make donations. I guess I just want to ask or clarify. It's in this environment, many people are doing whatever kind of shopping online, and they might be tempted to shop, make a purchase, but then have it delivered to the fire station. I think I'd want to discourage that process.
Yeah, I would discourage that. I would ask, just because if things are delayed and the shipping process, I'd hate to see for toys to show up here later on after we can't collect them anymore because of the deadlines that Toys for Tots sets every year for when we have to have the toys back. I mean, certainly if we were to get, and periodically some years we get some stragglers, and we'll hold on to them for the following year's toy drive. It's not a problem. But if people are going online, I would just suggest that they go to the Toys for Tots, Worcester Toys for Tots. They can put it in their search bar, or they can refer to one of the links on our social media and donate directly to them that way, if they're already online.
Yeah. Great, thank you. And can you just repeat those dates and times again?
Sure. Yes, it's going to be November 28th from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. and December 5th from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. as well.
Okay, and so those are Saturdays, I believe?
Yes, those are the upcoming next 2 Saturdays,
Next
yes.
2 Saturdays.
And we have to
Okay.
have everything to Worcester, by the 8th. So that gives us a couple days for the toys to kind of stay in quarantine, if you will, before we
Yeah.
start handling them and counting them and then bringing them down to Worcester.
Right, got it. Thank you very much. Anything else, board? Hearing none. Rob, once again, thank you very much. I appreciate all the work you do each and every year for this program. And certainly this is the kind of year where it probably needs a little more attention. So I appreciate it, and we'll do our
Well,
best.
thank you all, and have a nice Thanksgiving and a good holiday season to everybody.
Thank you,
Okay,
Rob.
take care.
All right, take care. Thank you.
Good night.
You too.
That brings us to reports. Let's begin with Scott Rogers.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess let me report out on 2 meetings since we last met. Community Affairs Committee got together and reviewed the results of the Jack-o'-lantern stroll, which went quite well, and got their plans together for the Light Up the Town event that'll happen the weekend of December 4th to 6th and the 10th to 12th. Basically a contest to light up your house, and like voting for your favorite pumpkin carving, vote for your favorite light display. So there's information out and about on how to register your home, and then how to vote when the time comes. The second meeting was with Library Board of Trustees. They're really looking forward to their new director, Jennifer Bruneau. She's starting on December 7th. And one of the primary discussions in that meeting and supported by the submission was the budget for the library. It gave me a chance to dig quite deep into their budget, and I had a couple follow-up meetings with library staff as well to understand how they operate. So it was great to meet with them, and then really looking forward to that new director. And that is my report.
Thank you very much, Scott. Julianne.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I want to add something to a topic that I brought up in my last report at the last meeting. At that time, I expressed appreciation to BC4T, the Borough's Cares for Troops, for the banners that are hanging in town. But I'd like to point out that the people who are responsible for that are Michelle Gillespie, Leslie Arsenal, Karen Brewster, and Beth Davison. Just wanted to make sure that people know who the core group is in case you meet them in town and want to say thank you personally, or to participate, or to donate. And since we are talking about a great volunteer group, I'd like to express my thanks, since it is Thanksgiving, to all the volunteer groups in town. There are many that do so much for us. Community Affairs, the Town Common, Earthworks, Historic District. It's too many to name, but you, the volunteers, are the people who make this town a community. So thank you very much. Moving on to my next item, in my role as liaison to CMRPC, which is Central Massachusetts Regional Planning Commission for people who are unfamiliar with that organization. So during the discussion at our last meeting, the planning board suggested via a memo from Carrie Martinek, the chairperson of planning board, that we might be able to work with CMRPC about some of the traffic issues that are coming before us. That's one step that we can take, but it's also been suggested that both boards meet to work on some solutions. And I would encourage us to talk about that possibility in future meetings. I think a joint meeting to brainstorm and really hash out those traffic issues could be beneficial. And lastly, I'd like to say 2020 is winding down, and it's certainly been an interesting year. This Thursday is Thanksgiving, and while I wish everyone a happy celebration, I also hope that you will all be well and stay safe. For many people, it'll be a different kind of day. It may be smaller, maybe virtual, but I want to extend my best wishes no matter how you spend the day. So happy Thanksgiving to all. And that ends my report.
Thank you, Julianne. Leslie.
Okay, I attended a recent meeting with the superintendent, and there were a couple key points I wanted to mention that I thought was interesting. First of all, the district is looking at how to move to or toward in-person learning, starting with the elementaries, potentially at the end of January, and then moving maybe February to the middle school, March with the high school. So that was a topic of discussion. However, with no changes to the learning models through the end of the year. The school district dashboard is updated weekly, and they are considering the screening of staff and students. I just want to thank the school department and in particular Superintendent Greg Martineau. He is just, it's phenomenal the amount of work that the school department is doing in order to keep everyone safe, to keep everyone happy, to keep parents hopefully accommodated in terms of how their kids are learning, with whom they are learning, when they are learning, and where they are learning. So it's just a lot of work, and it's a logistical nightmare, I would call it, really, for the school district. So I do want to thank them for all their work. I would like to thank everyone who organized and participated in the Scouting for Food drive, which took place on November 14th. That is a phenomenal event. And I think one thing that was great was that they had everyone place their bags at the end of the driveway, as opposed to having the scouts come up to the front door. I think it kept everyone at a safe distance. And actually, I think it's not a bad idea for the future anyway, because I'm sure it's a lot quicker for them to, you know, stop the car and quickly pick up the bag at the end of the driveway, as opposed to running up driveways and onto sidewalks and up to front doors and so forth. So I think that was a great idea on their part. They took in over 9,000 items, which nicely restocks our food pantry. I don't know what the breakdown of the types of items were. I don't know if there are still gaps in terms of how they are stocked, but when you bring in over 9,000 items, thanks to the scouts, I think it's a lot to be grateful for. And thank you to residents for that. And my last comment is to John and Scott Charpentier, the DPW, and Fred Litchfield, if you could please pass along my thanks to the trash hauler. Those guys work really hard. I happened to notice one day that on a particularly windy day, some recycling had flown out of someone's bin and had gone all over the place and was in the yard. And I thought, oh boy, that trash is just going to go rolling down the street because the hauler is just going to come by and he's going to pick up the bin, and that's going to be the end of it. Well, he went up into the yard and picked up all the items and made sure that everything was cleared out. And I think there is something to be said for that, because I know in the past, other haulers that we've had, I've observed think differently. You know, they would throw the bin in the truck maybe, and bottles or something would fall out and they took off. Didn't matter. But this particular hauler, I've noticed, really, without question, has had a lot of integrity and has done a great job. The other thing I want to add is that with more people recycling, a lot of people are putting out more recycling bins and heavier recycling bins. So I know those guys are working a lot harder too. I think there's, in a lot of cases, there's more recycling than trash going on. So if you could pass along my thanks, I did observe that in person. And I think there's something to be said for that. They're really doing a terrific job and take a lot of pride in their work. So that ends my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Tim.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let's see, in the last couple of weeks, I had a long phone conversation with a Bartlett Street area resident. Resident had concerns about the truck traffic and asked about the direction that the trucks are turning out of the warehouse facilities. Reached out to a couple people in town, and Kathy Jubert, our town planner, provided some very helpful information regarding the conditions that the developers agreed to when they were building the facilities. One of the conditions is that the trucks should be only turning out of their facilities and only going down Bartlett Street for local deliveries only. I exchanged emails with Kathy Jubert regarding enforcement of this, and I know a couple town officials have been out. I asked Kathy to reach out to the owners and the tenants to remind them of these conditions, so that they can continue to follow them or do a better job of following them. This is the first step in the process. Hopefully this reduces the amount of truck traffic going down Bartlett Street. I called the resident back and let them know of the steps being taken. And I just want to let any other residents in the Bartlett area that if you have concerns and would like to speak to me directly, please feel free to call me. My phone number is 508-709-5556. Please, if you have any issues, email or call. Be happy to speak with you and address those issues as best we can. I had another long conversation with another resident who expressed a number of concerns. One area that they expressed frustration with was communication from the Board of Selectmen. To help address this issue, going forward, I will be holding weekly virtual office hours. If any resident has any areas, any ideas, concerns, or just want to talk about the town, I will be available every Monday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Feel free to call me during those times. Again, the best number to reach me, 508-709-5556. No appointment needed. And as always, you can reach me or any member of the board via email. All of our email addresses are listed on the town website. Again, I will be holding weekly virtual office hours every Monday from 11 to 1. You can reach me again at 508-709-5556. If that time doesn't work for anybody, please email me and we can schedule another time. So I hope making myself more available during those times will help residents feel more comfortable reaching out and discussing anything that they may have concerns, ideas about. I'm excited to report that the Diversity and Inclusion Committee will be holding our first meeting next Thursday at 7 p.m. I'd like to thank everybody who helped make that happen. John Cordair was very helpful in helping me get through setting up a committee for the first time, and his guidance is very much appreciated. So thank you very much for that, John. Leslie Rutan for your help on the interview committee. It was great to see that we had so many people come out, so I'm excited about that. I'd like to thank Chief Liver. We had some good conversations regarding it, and I just want to thank him. And Becca Meekins for your help getting things rolling. I'm excited to get going next Thursday. And also, I wanted to thank all the residents who contacted me supporting it and encouraging our efforts. They may not have applied for the committee, but they're just residents who I've spoken with who appreciate the efforts that the town is making in this area. The D&I committee is the first step, but in order to make real, lasting, significant change, we'll need the support of the entire community, and I really feel that's been expressed so far. So thank you for that. I'd like to wish Christian Campero a happy 13th birthday. I'd also like to wish his mother, Tricia, a happy 5th anniversary. For a number of reasons, it is a special birthday for Christian and his mother. Because of COVID, Tricia couldn't have a traditional birthday party for him. So she worked hard to put something special together for Christian. And on Saturday, she organized a really great birthday parade that a lot of people from town, I bet you there had to be at least 30 cars that took part in the drive-by. We met at Lincoln Street, went down by the middle school. There was a number of mascots from all the Worcester professional sports teams there. And we were escorted by the police and fire departments. So it was fun to participate. My two boys are 5 and 8. They're big Railers fans, so they were excited to see tracks from the Railers there. So it was cool. But I just wanted to say thank you to Chief Liver, and thank you to Chief Parenti for making the staff and the resources available to take part in that on Saturday. It was very much appreciated. I think that it made a good impression, and that it helped make his birthday a little bit special. So thank you both for taking part in that. The holidays are coming up. COVID is raging again. We talked about this when the COVID first hit. Local businesses need our help. I've had some residents reach out to ask what the town is going to do to support the small businesses. There's not a lot directly that the town can do except to encourage people to spend money at our local businesses. Go to the retail shops, go to boutiques, go to restaurants, tip, spend money. I think the best quote I've heard about spending money locally is Amazon will be fine. Amazon's going to be there in January and February. Some of our local businesses are going to have a tough winter. So I know Amazon makes it easy, delivers it to your house, but if you can make an effort to go out and spend money around town, it will go a long way to help our local businesses. So please do that. And lastly, the Senior Center has a new Facebook page up. If you go and check that out, the amount of work that's going on up there to make sure that our senior community is being taken care of is really impressive. So take a look at that, see how you can help out. I think in the holiday season, one of the best things that people can give is their time. So make an effort to do that. And lastly, happy Turkey Day. That ends my report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tim. I only have a couple of items here. One, with regard to traffic safety, I have asked John and staff to please kind of do some of the background and research and prepare some material for our next regular meeting in December for the board to kind of get an understanding of the various factors that bear upon this. So we'll be proceeding with that. Julianne, as you mentioned, want to give this some attention, but I think a first step will be for the board to first have its own discussion on this matter. Second, I believe it was at the Senior Center this past Saturday. I was up there for a different reason, but I believe it was collaboration of the Senior Center, Northborough Helping Hands, and Northborough Food Pantry, who were delivering some goods and services to people in the community. I just want to thank those volunteers for the work they're doing to try to mitigate some of the impacts some of our residents are feeling, and also for the many contributors and donors who provided the resources to make that effort possible. So appreciate that. And then finally, as Tim was just discussing, we are operating in a different model, and we certainly encourage everyone to approach the holiday seasons here in the safest way possible. Understandably, people are going to be anxious to see family and friends through the holidays. We just ask you to try to employ as safe as practices as you can, and get us through this period. And having said that, I do wish everyone a very happy Thanksgiving this week. So that concludes my report. John, anything to add?
Sure, just a couple of quick things. One, I want to make sure the board was aware on November 16th in the morning, Kristen Black, our health agent, myself, along with Karen Chapman and the two chiefs, did a workshop for the local businesses with regard to COVID-19. I think Kristen did a great job putting a lot of information together. It's all up on the town's website. All the links are live, all the orders and the latest information is there. If anybody has an interest, feel free to visit that. Also on the COVID page is for anybody who was not able to participate. We did record it in that workshop is up, and anybody wants to see it, I encourage you to go through. A lot of great information there for businesses, and made some great connections. So anybody, helpful for anybody who had questions regarding their specific businesses, the new orders and things of that nature. So that's up. So check that out. The other thing I wanted to mention to the board is we typically the second or third week in December, we have what is traditionally been our financial trend monitoring update. That's where we do a big presentation on looking at trends backwards 10 years in our 5-year forecasts. I'm going to respectfully request that be delayed this year. As you know, we didn't wrap up town meeting until the end of July. So closing out fiscal 20 was late. The state still doesn't have a fiscal 21 budget. We have been waiting to get data from the state on our local receipts, particularly hotel and meals. That stuff is delayed. And so we basically don't have any information to load into our models. We can certainly look at our trends, but respectfully, in terms of trying to set the table and give you some indication of fiscal 2022, we simply don't have the information. So respectfully, I'd ask that we delay in speaking with the finance director, probably something very beginning of January, try to pull information together. Everything is running about a month and a half behind. So right now we have no information whatsoever. Normally we'd start to get some glimmer of what state aid would look like. They haven't even completed their fiscal 21 budget. So everything is just backed up right now. We have a considerable amount of workload on us right now, dealing with still the pandemic. The other piece of it is we are in the process of submitting for what we have for expenses under the CARES Act. And we've been meeting extensively with the superintendent and his staff regarding issues that they're experiencing for fiscal 21, the year we're in now, and trying to project out kind of where we think we might see ourselves in 2022. So we're getting information. Scott Rogers mentioned, the library budget. So we've gotten budgets back from the departments. We're getting, again, a minimum level service budget. Everything is coming in late. So we're going to need a little bit more time. If you really look at December 10th is a week and a half away. It's just inconceivable that we can get that done in a week and a half, especially just not having the data. So we're going to look at some fresh dates and we'll get those out. But tentatively right now, I just don't see that December 10th date being realistic for us. Everybody wants information. We want information, but we rely on information from others to give you information, and that chain right now is just delayed. So we'll be back with some more information on that, and with a new date as soon as we can lock something up. That's all I have,
Great.
Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. That brings us to public comment. I see 2 attendees, and raise your hand if you'd like to speak. As previously mentioned, for public comment, I'll bring you into the meeting, ask you to first please state your name and address, and then you'll have 3 minutes to present your questions or concerns. The board does not take up topics for discussion or deliberation or decision-making. You're certainly welcome to present the information for our consideration. And if there are fairly straightforward questions that staff might be able to answer immediately, we will see about doing that. So Susie Sizlicka, let me bring you into the meeting. Hello, Susie.
Hello, Susie Sizlicka, 8 Emerson Road. I feel like I should be on your Christmas card list now. Everybody should have my address memorized. I just want to say thank you so much, Julianne, for bringing up about putting it on the agenda, and that it is being given thought and preparation by all the the department heads in thinking about it and how to approach it. I think, for example, what Tim had said about making calls after speaking to a resident about one traffic safety issue. I've approached other committee members. I think it would just be a great thing to have centralized. I also wanted to thank John and everybody in the finance department and everything, because this is my second Zoom meeting for tonight. I sat through the school budget meeting as well, and I can tell how much work is being spent on the budgeting and making sure that even though things might be tight, the shortfalls aren't felt, so to speak. So I just wanted to say thank you and happy Thanksgiving. And I hope everybody decorates their house for our next event. And we are hoping, I don't know when the next meeting is. When's the next meeting? We are going to be having a tree lighting, a virtual ceremony. So I did want to announce that on behalf of the Community Affairs Committee. So I hope you will all tune in for that as well. It'll be the first Saturday in December, I believe the 5th. So I don't know when your next meeting will be, but just in case it's after that. So
We
thank
won't
you.
be meeting, we won't be meeting before then. So thank you for mentioning that.
Yes, I
is
know
there-
one of you are going to be there and speaking, but I don't know who, but somebody will be
Right.
with us and we will be doing the virtual event. And then the viewing, I'm not sure, we're still ironing that out, how we're going to be doing that.
Yeah. So Selectman Kalen is going to be the speaker at that event. And
Fantastic.
do you have a time schedule for that, Susie?
Hold on
Or is
just a
that not?
minute.
Yeah.
We do have a time. It is at 5 p.m. We're doing a little bit earlier this year because we're not going to be having the crowd and there's no trolley. But we are encouraging all to visit our Facebook page and our webpage. All of our small businesses in town, because they don't have the trolley event, have been donating things. We're advertising for them, and we are also encouraging people to shop local and trying to give them the exposure they would have had through, the trolley event and all the local shopping things that would normally be going on.
Right.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Susie. And we have no other attendees here for public comment. So public comment is concluded, which brings us to new business. The first item is interview subcommittee recommendations for appointments to the Elderly and Disabled Taxation Fund Committee, the Historic District Commission, and the Youth Commission. Leslie and Tim, I'm not sure which one of you is going to, I guess Leslie, are you going to lead that?
Yes. First of all, I want to thank everyone who applied. Always great to see people applying for these and taking the time to interview with us via Zoom. I move the board vote to appoint Cynthia Moore to the Elderly and Disabled Taxation Fund Committee for a partial one-year term to expire on April 30th, 2020, as recommended by the Interview Subcommittee.
Second.
Moved by Leslie Rattan, seconded by Tim Kalen. Any discussion? Hearing none, this is a roll call vote. Scott Rogers.
Aye.
Julianne Hirsch.
Aye.
Leslie Rattan.
Aye.
Tim Kalen.
Aye.
And I also vote aye. Carries unanimously.
Okay, second one, I move the board vote to appoint Sherry Clark to the Youth Commission for a partial 3-year term to expire on April 30th, 2023, as recommended by the Interview Subcommittee.
Second.
Moved by Leslie Rattan, seconded by Tim Kalen. Again, a roll call vote. Scott Rogers.
Aye.
Julianne Hirsch.
Aye.
Leslie Rattan.
Aye.
Tim Kalen.
Aye.
And I, Jason Perot, also vote aye. Carries unanimously.
The final one this evening is I move the board vote to appoint Robert Light as an alternate member on the Historic District Commission for a partial 3-year term to expire on April 30th, 2023, as recommended by the Interview Subcommittee.
Second.
Moved by Leslie Rattan, seconded by Tim Kalen. Once again, a roll call vote. Scott Rogers.
Aye.
Julianne Hirsch.
Aye.
Leslie Rattan.
Aye.
Tim Kalen.
Aye.
And I, Jason Perot, also vote aye. Carries unanimously. So all three candidates, I want to thank Cynthia Moore for Elderly and Disabled Taxation Fund Committee, Sherry Clark for Youth Commission, and Robert Light for alternate on Historic District Commission for stepping forward to volunteer their time and expertise in these roles. Leslie and Tim, any final comment?
No, I just always encourage though, anyone who has not been selected for any of the positions that they interview for to please look online on the town website and look at all the other openings that are there. Please consider applying. There's so many wonderful people in town with some great backgrounds. And so I hate to lose somebody who is offered to volunteer. So please consider volunteering for another committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Next item of business, consider closing town offices, Department of Public Works and Senior Center on Thursday, December 24th at 12 noon. John?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I ask that this be placed on for your consideration and respectfully, hopeful that the board would be willing to close at 12 noon. It's a Thursday, Christmas Eve, to allow non-essential staff to be with their families. Again, this wouldn't be a permanent thing. This would just be per your vote this evening. Again, anybody scheduled to be off that day is off that day, using vacation. If they're sick, they're using sick. So it's just the people that were scheduled to work being let go at noon, if the board would consider that.
Very good, John. Thank you. Members, comments, questions? There doesn't seem to be much controversy here. So do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move the board vote to close the town offices, DPW and Senior Center on Thursday, December 24th, 2020 at 12 noon to provide staff additional time with their families this holiday season. Staff who are normally scheduled to work this day shall receive their regular rate of pay. In the event that essential staff are called into work, they shall receive their regular rate of pay. And staff not scheduled to work this day, including staff on scheduled vacation leave or sick leave, shall have such scheduled leave calculated on a full day basis.
Second.
Moved by Julianne Hirsch, seconded by Scott Rogers. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Roll call vote. Scott Rogers.
Aye.
Julianne Hirsch.
Aye.
Leslie Rattan.
Aye.
Tim Kalen.
Aye.
And I, Jason Perot, also vote aye. Carries unanimously.
Thank you very much on behalf of the staff. I really appreciate that consideration. We could use a little year-end 2020 morale booster. So thank you.
Yes, you're quite welcome. Appreciate all the hard work that's gone in, especially this past year with the very challenging circumstances. So it's well deserved. Next item, set meeting schedule for January through April 2021. We had proposed dates. If I can find my sheet here. Here it is. Proposed dates for the Board of Selectmen meeting from January through April. There are no conflicts of significance, and so these meeting dates would be the regularly scheduled second and fourth Mondays of the month, January 11, January 25, February 8, February 22, March 8, March 22, April 12th, and then finally April 26th would be the scheduled day for annual town meeting. So
Sure hope so.
yes, we can only hope. Yeah, any questions or comments from the board? I don't see any issues here, just for our information.
Yeah, so Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I vote, or I move the board vote to set the meeting schedule for January through April as follows. January 11 and 25, February 8 and 22, March 8 and 22, April 12th, and April 26th, which would be town meeting.
Second.
Moved by Scott Rogers, seconded by Leslie Rattan. This is a roll call vote. Scott Rogers.
Aye.
Julianne Hirsch.
Aye.
Leslie Rattan.
Aye.
Tim Kalen.
Aye.
And I, Jason Perot, also vote aye. So the meeting schedule is set. Thank you. Next item, execution of cemetery deed 1107. Do I have a motion? We didn't have this on our motions list, so would someone care to offer a motion?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I move the board vote to approve the execution of cemetery deed 1107.
Second?
Second.
Moved by Scott Rogers, seconded first by Leslie Rattan. Roll call vote, Scott Rogers,
Aye.
Julian Hirsch,
Aye.
Leslie Rattan,
Aye.
Tim Kalen,
Aye.
and I, Jason Perot, also vote aye, carries unanimously. Any other business to come before the board tonight? No other business. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Chairman, I move the board vote to adjourn the November 23rd meeting of the Board of Selectmen.
Second.
Do I have a Second. I think I had Julian Hirsch with the motion, Scott Rogers with the second. This is another roll call vote. Scott Rogers,
Aye.
Julian Hirsch,
Aye.
Leslie Rattan,
Aye.
Tim Kalen,
Aye.
and I, Jason Pro, also vote aye. Carries unanimously. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much and have a happy Thanksgiving.
Same
You
to
too.
you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Happy
you.
Thanksgiving, everybody.